What's really happening in the real estate market? We're going to talk about that right now. So today we're going to be talking about the Toronto real estate market, and a lot has changed, okay, in the last month. Okay, so number one, the government decided to increase their foreign buyer tax. Okay, so before it was 20%, now they went up to 25%. And starting January of 2023, the federal government is going to ban all foreign buyers, okay, for up to 2 years. So this is going to hamper demand. Okay, there are ways to get around it, and I'm not going to get around. I'm not going to get into it about that. Okay. The second thing we need to think about too is the interest rates. It's gone up in October. Okay. Now it's expected to go up again in December, despite the job reports that came out. Canada, there's about over 108,000 new jobs. Most of them are manufacturing and hospitality. Okay. Is it a seller's market or a buyer's market? Well, it really depends on a couple of factors, right? Type of home, your location, any amenities, how old is the home. And so the information I'm going to be presenting to you right now is going to be more about the general market. Okay. If you want something more specific, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to help. The next thing we have to think about too is the approval from the provincial government, where there's 3 additional dwellings compared to just 1. So now, not just do you have your primary residence, but you can also rent out your basements and also in the backyard as well. So for the effects for this, it's going to supposedly help with the supply, right? That's how they're going to reach the provincial government's goal of over 1 million homes. Now, whether or not that's going to have a major impact, we'll see. Because right now, what I've been noticing too is people that want to rent out their basements, they've done it. They just never recorded it. But the backyard, dwelling is very interesting, right? So they're stepping on the municipal government's toes on that. But yeah, we'll see if that'll help. Okay, so now the last thing we have to think about too is, the different types of asset classes. You're probably hearing on the media right now that, everything's still crashing. Everyone's still comparing it on the all-time highs. Okay, in Toronto, it's actually April that's an all-time high on average. Okay, but as we get into different types of homes, you'll see that will actually change. So we're going to be comparing 2 different asset classes as well. Okay, so the NASDAQ composite, which is the stock market, right? It actually dropped, okay, significantly more than the actual real estate market in Toronto. The NASDAQ composite dropped by 29%. The crypto market dropped by 68%. Okay, whereas the Toronto market, on a yearly basis, at the same time period, October 2022 versus October 2021, it only dropped by about 3%. Okay, even comparing to all-time high, it was, it dropped by 12%. Okay, so despite this, the real estate market has shown that it's a lot more resilient. Okay, so now we're going to be going into more detail. Okay, moving forward, we're going to be looking at different types of time periods at the same time. Okay, coming from a financial background where I was crunching tens of thousands of different data points, it really depends on what information is presented to you and how you can interpret it. So I'm just giving you an information and you can kind of interpret it yourself. I'm not going to go through every single asset class, just highlight the most important points, but feel free to reach out and ask questions. So let's get started, right? So in October 2022, 1,894 transactions, 5,366 listings. Average sold price is 1,093,000. The type of market's 2.83, which is still a seller's market. Okay, I don't care who says it's a buyer's market. Tell them to watch this video. Okay, if the type of market is anywhere from 0 to 5, it's seller's market. Anywhere from 5 to 6. It's a balanced market, and from 6 onwards is a buyer's market. Okay, and then in terms of the days on market, it took 21 days to sell an average home in Toronto. Okay, on comparing on a month-to-month basis, right, there were still more transactions that happened. Okay, compared to September 2022, only 1,744 transactions. Now there was even more listings at the time as well, 5,485. Now, the price also increased by 3%, okay? And the type of market is still a seller's market, and in terms of days on market, stayed relatively the same. Okay, in terms of, the all-time highs, the peaks, okay, April, it was 3,024 sales, 4,732, actual active listings. And in terms of average price, 1.243 million. And in terms of the type of market, it was 1.56, and the days on market was 12. So it took only 12 days to sell a home in Toronto at the time. In terms of, on a yearly basis now, right, that we're comparing, in terms of that, there was significantly more sales that happens, okay, even on a yearly basis, about 50%, 3,794. In terms of active listings, there was actually less, okay, causing it to be more of a seller's market at the time. Now, in terms of the price, it was still a little bit more expensive at that given period, 3%, and it took a lot. It was only 16 days to sell. In terms of the pre-pandemic numbers, though, which is interesting to note here, is that there was still a lot more sales at the time. There's 43% sales, okay, 3,295. In terms of the active listings, right, there was less listings, 8% less, 4,980. In terms of the average price, it was a lot less too. It was 18% less, of 925,498. And in terms of the type of market, it was still a seller's market, okay, 1.51, more so then than it is now. And in terms of the days on market, stayed 19 days. So now we're going to go right into the detached homes in Toronto. So in October, 599 sales, 1,428 listings, with an average sold price of 1.609 million. Type of market, still a seller's market of 2.37, and days on market is 19. So on a month-to-month basis, though, it had the biggest, increase, okay, where it was only 497 transactions in September. Now it's 599, a 21% increase, okay. The biggest decrease was in actually October of 2021, where it was 1,061. Okay. In terms of the active listings, February had the least amount of listings of 856. Okay. Whereas pre-pandemic numbers, there's 2,074 listings available. Now, obviously, the biggest at the peak for detaches in Toronto was, 2,073,000 back in February, which was a 22% decrease. But again, though, compared to other asset classes, right, it still outperformed them very well. Now, comparing to pre-pandemic numbers, you're still up 22%. Okay. And the type of market, October was heavily favoring more of a seller's market. Okay. And days on market, in February, it took only 9 days to sell. Okay, we're right now at the peak of, how long it takes to sell a home. It's taking longer right now, 19 days. In terms of semi-detaches, right? So on a month-to-month basis, right, it had a biggest increase of 12% of 201 transactions that happened. Okay. And in terms of, the number of sales, a biggest decline in March was 331. So the average price at the time was the peak for semi-detaches of 1.54 million, of 21% decrease. Okay, but comparing it on pre-pandemic numbers, you're still up 11%. Okay, and again, it's still a seller's market. It has transitioned a little bit from a balanced market more so of a seller's market. Still a seller's market, but it's more so right now on a month-to-month basis. But on March at the peak, it pretty much doubled, okay, of 0.74. Okay, and it only took 8 days to sell. Now it's taking a lot longer in October, okay, compared to the other time periods we're looking at. In terms of townhouses in Toronto, right, 62 transactions, so 17% increase from September, okay, 114 listings, average sold price of 1.281 million, type of market, still a seller's market, more so than the previous month, and it took 2 less days to sell on a month-to-month basis of 17 days. Okay, now comparing that, number of sales, the biggest drop was in October, whereas 128 transactions. Okay, in terms of the number of listings, right, there was a lot less listings in October of 2021 of 95, so 20% less in that given period of time. Obviously, the peak was in March of 1.47 million, and comparing that to pre-pandemic numbers, which are still up substantially of 30% of 982,000. It's still a seller's market regardless. And in terms of the days on market, it's 17 days. The lowest was March, which was only 7 days to sell a home, a townhouse in Toronto. Okay, yet if you think about it, October 2022 versus October 2019, pre-pandemic numbers, is still taking less time to sell homes now than pre-pandemic, where it took 21 days versus 17. Okay. Next one is condo townhouses in Toronto, right? October, 123 sales, 348 listings, 863,000 average sold price. Type of market 2.83, and days on market 22. So in terms of on a month-to-month basis, the sales jumped up by 4%, okay, which is only 118. But the biggest drop was in October of 2021, which was 300 transactions. In terms of active listings, right? October 2021 had less listings, the least listings, 286. And on a month-to-month basis, there's 368. So there's less listings that happen on a month-to-month basis, but more so in a year ago, which is very interesting notes. In terms of average price, obviously the average price at the peak was April, 951,000. Okay, it was about a 9% decrease. Okay, but on a yearly basis, it's only 3%. Now, if you compare it to pre-pandemic numbers, you're still up 21%, where the average sold price in condo townhouses, which is 715,000. Okay, definitely last but not least, okay, the condo apartments actually has the most impact in the Toronto figures because there's a lot more transactions that happen in this asset class versus other types of homes. Okay, so there was a 1% increase, 888 transactions, 3,131 active listings, with an average sold price of 743,000. Type of market, which was stayed relatively the same compared to month-to-month basis of 3.53, and it took 24 days to sell. Okay, so those numbers haven't really changed. Comparing to all-time highs though, rates, there was 59% less sales that happened. Okay, and there were about 58% more listings. Okay, now this is causing, obviously a downward pressure of the average, price, where at the peak it was 831,000. Okay, and comparing that to really pre-pandemic numbers, you're still up though by 12%. Good to know, which was, October 2019, 662,000. And it is taking, 14 additional days to sell during the peak. Okay, so it took only 10 days to sell a condo apartment. Now it's taking 24. So one of the things to note based on all this information here is the following, right? In the short term, interest rates do play a role, okay, on home prices. But in the long term, you can see that in October 2019, interest rates were actually lower, yet the home prices went up. Okay, so if you were a home buyer at the time, and you didn't buy, it's actually costing you a lot more in terms of dollar value, but also a higher percentage. Okay, so you really need to figure that out. Even if you got a raise, right? Does it really warrant, make it easier for you to actually buy a home now? Okay. Also, just to remind you again that these values are based on the average of the city, okay, and based on your features of your home, upgrades, the age of the home, location, amenities. These will heavily impact the figure of your home. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know. Make sure you subscribe. If you find this information useful, make sure you share it with your friends and family. And feel free to reach out. Again, though, just to remind you again, it is a seller's market. Do not believe what the media is saying or your friend that thinks they know everything. Based on the figures, this is not the case. One of the transactions I was doing earlier this month, a buyer agent told me, hey, we're submitting you this price because, it's the buyer's market. Needless to say that the conversation didn't go well for them, and we sold it a lot higher than what they actually offered. Okay, so feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to help. Take care. Bye-bye.